Hello and thanks for joining us today on Encore, the Sudanese designer who's using fashion to empower women and refugees in her home country and beyond. A trained doctor working in the capital Khartoum, she was in Paris showing her second collection at the United Nations in 2018. When the Sudanese revolution happened, she's been here ever since. She's one of the guests of honour at this weekend's Araba Follies Music and Art Festival in Paris. Welcome to the show, Mayada Adil.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, it's a really important time for African fashion. Paris Fashion Week opened with a fashion show from Nigerian designer Kenneth Eze, which featured Naomi Campbell. The supermodel is a champion of designers from the African continent. In January, the Cameroonian designer Iman Aissi made history by becoming the first designer from sub-Saharan Africa to join Paris Haute Couture Fashion Week. Why do you think the time is now for African designers?
Because I believe our generations are willing and committed to bring the African scene into life. And through fashion, we decided to overcome all the traditional racism that we've been through in our father generation. And we used the art as a way of freedom of expression. And yeah, fashion, it's one of the strongest tools to amplify that. Yeah.
Now, for you, fashion has always been a political act and also a way to empower women and to give them a voice and a job, not just a voice. You graduated as a doctor in Khartoum in 2017. How did you end up here in Paris in 2020, now a fashion designer?
Okay, cool. In 2017, I started working with the World Health Organization, where I start visiting in a missions to the refugees camp, specifically South Sudanese refugees camp. Here, when I found those women are really happy women, and they're well colored, and there's a patterns, and there is a very beautiful scene that I have never felt before. And during a talk with those women, I've been introduced to the different culture, different tribes, and I decided to invoice those marginalized women through the fashion collection that I made, dedicated for them, Sudan and South Sudan in UNESCO Paris 2018. And through my work as a doctor, I found a way to myself, because working as a doctor is really stressful job for me. And the way that I was trying to find my way to express fashion was always the tool for me, the instrument to convey that. And here I am.
Okay, well, let's take a look at your second collection, which was shown in Paris at UNESCO in 2018.
Cool.
Tell us more about the clothes that we saw there.
Those clothes were completely inspired from those refugees, from them. Mary, she's South Sudanese refugee. And from the talk that I had with those women, I understood that fashion could be a way for income for those women, because they weren't allowed to work outside of the camps. So I used to bring the work for them and to do a collaboration with them. And I got really inspired by the colors. That's the colors that I have seen in the refugees camp: the blue, the screaming yellow, and the orange.
Okay, well, the African designer Kenneth Eze, we saw earlier, who opened Paris Fashion Week, has talked about how his mum only actually wore African clothes on a Sunday, and the rest of the week she was always a different person. Let's take a listen.
It's the youth, you know. My parents lived in the colonized era. I didn't live in the colonized era. I don't see myself to be colonized, you know. And it's just like, now it's time to just move everything around and just be free.
Now, Ize works with a small circle of weavers from Nigeria. He wants to preserve this ancient craft in his work. Now, with your first collection in 2017, Nubian Queens, you wanted to link Sudanese women with their powerful female ancestors and remind them that there's way more to their history than just Sharia law. Explain to us why showing African heritage and tradition in your fashion is so important.
I believe we've been, as a woman in the history of Sudan, I'm just specifically in Sudan, was difficult to express herself. So during readings, I've been reading a lot about the fashion in Sudan, and I found that Sudanese women, during the time of colonization, they used the traditional taupe, Sudanese traditions, wear. It's a way to resist the colonization during that time. So I got inspired, and when I did the Nubian Queen collection 2017 in Kenya, I decided to dedicate those collection to those Sudanese women to remind them that their ancestors were resisting by their body politics, by their fashion statement. And I'm using always the essence that shows the women are really strong. The triangles, this is a sustainable fashion by using renewable energy resources with the solar cells implanted on a wool fabric. It was the first in Africa, and it's still under experimental, and I would like to go forward with that project in sustainable fashion.
Well, you're working on so many things. You're working on your third collection with two other refugee designers from Chad and Somalia.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, a fashion designer, his name is Ibrahim from Chad, and also Zahra, she's from Somali. And we met during working in many workshops, and we're trying to do a fusion between our cultures because it's very connected to each other, the Chadian and Somali cultures. And we try to do this collection with the Atelier Artistes d'un Exil. It will showcase in November 2020, this year. And we're still on the progress and working on this collection together. Yes.
Okay. Sudan has been beset by conflict for many years. There are plans now to actually hand over the ousted President Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court to be held accountable for his alleged crimes during his 30-year dictatorship. Now, freedom of expression was at the forefront of the fight to overthrow him. Do you think people in Sudan feel freer now?
We're in the process on a transitional period of Sudan political scene, and during the time of the set-in, people were living in this perfect community of freedom of expression through art, through chanting, music, everything we've been prohibited to do during 30 years. And among those artists, there were women that they used the graffiti. There is Asil Diab. She's the first Sudanese woman to do a graffiti in the names of dedicated to the Sudanese women. And yes, I believe there is a huge progress in the freedom of expression in Sudan, and women are taking the lead. Yes, women are taking the lead.
And artists as well, and all over Africa. Earlier this month was Togo Fashion Week in Lomé. The event teamed up with the UN in its fight against HIV/AIDS. Now, a fashion show organised in the streets of the capital was a celebration of homegrown talent, but a night that culminated in the distribution of free contraception to the crowds. Here's the organiser.
Everyone in the FEMO team agreed that it would be a good idea to raise awareness, to make young people think about the need to protect themselves. It's not yet really part of our mentality. They say they're ashamed even to buy condoms in a shop. So we thought we should hand them round so they get familiar with them. It doesn't make sense not to act.
Mayada, how important do you think fashion is in raising awareness about such important issues?
I think fashion right now, it's a way to portray Africa in a different aspect than just being a civil war and famine. And fashion, it's the tool that I was always believed it's a body politics. So To me, the problem that I concern the feminism situation in Sudan, the traditions, and the racism. So the way that I portray that by combining, for example, the tribes that they have fights or different nations, they want peace, like Sudan and South Sudan, and feminism by empowering women through my fashions collections and fashion art, and working with the, for example, working with the refugees women, and working with the refugees men as well, and just to make sure not to leave anyone behind, and take it forward from there, and yeah.
Okay. Well, Mayada, we always end our show with our guests' cultural pick of the moment. There have been two remarkable Sudanese films out recently. One is Talking About Trees, which details the extraordinary efforts made to keep cinema alive in Sudan, in a country where film has been forbidden for many years. The director, Suhab Qasim al-Bari, was recently a guest here on our show. And you're going to tell us about one of the other films.
You Will Die at 20. It's a drama film made by the director, Sudanese director, Amjad Abul Ala. And it was made at the time of revolution in Sudan, 2019. And it brought a lot of success for Sudan in the Sudan's name. And it's talking about the Sufism and our Sudanese traditions and culture. It's showcased right now on the cinema, and it's screening on the cinema on France right now.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, thank you very much. We're going to leave you then with You Will Die at 20. Thanks to Mayada Adil. You're going to be at the Arabofolies Music and Art Festival in Paris this weekend. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
ده ولدي مش ذنبي. الخليفة قال لي بيموت يوم 22 حول.
لبست الأسود في حياته ولا الحزن بقى عادة.
أنا لو مكانك والله يقعد ملك، وبعد ما تم 20 سنة أطلع لهم رسالة.